Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel for some Mustang content this time. I'm doing a number of mods at the same time. Just makes it easier that way. So the big mod is I'm converting to E-Pass steering from a newer Mustang. So this is a electrical steering rack out of a 2014 Roush Mustang GT. This is the stock hydraulic rack over here. Obviously I got this from a wrecking yard that deals with performance cars, so it wasn't too bad. I think it was 280 bucks shipped, something like that, so not terrible. And I had 60,000 miles on it, or 50 something thousand miles, so not a whole lot of miles. They might ask, why bother going through all this trouble to convert to electric steering? Well, there's a few reasons. One is horsepower. I mean, it's not a lot. It's probably 10, 15 horsepower tops. Probably more like 10 horsepower that it takes to turn that. This is where the power steering pump used to be. To turn that power steering pump in the higher RPM ranges, like when you're tracking the car. So that's part of it. But also, the power steering pumps have known to fail on track, just because there's a lot of stress on them. They're not made for racing. So when you're running big tires, a lot of load on the system, and then you're running it, 4 to 5, 6,000, RPM for 20 minutes at a time, basically. And fluid gets hot, unless you got a good cooler on it, you start to bake the pumps, basically, and it's just hard on everything. And so that's another reason, is the pumps tend to go out. Third reason is this car has 120-something thousand miles on it. The racks, I had a little click in the steering, like a little pop sometimes, and it's not anything else, and it had to be the rack. The other thing it could be is it could have been the heim joints on the. I did notice that one of these was really tight, and so that might just be popping, like when you. It might be sticking, so like when you go to turn the wheel, it just pops and lets go. I don't know. It could be in the rack. It wasn't like a huge noise. I never felt any slop in anything, but something that just kind of concerned me. It only did it at like low speeds, like in a parking lot, and only do it like once every now and then. So it wasn't like a massive deal. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, I'd rather replace it, and since I don't want to just put another rack in it just the way it was, so a buddy of mine, Chris Mitchell, did this mod on his car. So you can't just bolt it in. I mean, you can, but you have to have some other stuff too. So Modular Motorsports makes this little box here, which basically turns the rack on and tells it to work. So these racks, like in the newer Mustangs, from the factory you get multiple steering feels. So in other words, it changes how much help it gives you with the power. I don't have that ability to change that, so basically it's just powered on in the normal mode. So it's kind of a bummer, but not a huge deal. So you need this box. This is what tells the rack to turn on, and this is the power cable that plugs into the rack, and this goes straight to the main fuse box and the main ground. So there's a lot of amperage that can go through here, so it's a big cable. So we got that. So another mod that I'm doing at the same time, also a mod that my buddy Chris Mitchell did, or Chris did, and anyways, it's a Meziere electric water pump. So a couple reasons for going with an electric water pump. So this actually has a idler pulley on the front of the water pump. So this just spins. It's not connected to anything. The water pump's behind it, and it's a little motor in there. This is the wire harness coming off of the motor. It frees up some horsepower. That's part of it. Not a whole lot. I would say 5 to 10, somewhere in there, probably 6 or 7 horsepower. So, and that's way up top. That's not cruising or anything. That's probably hardly anything at cruise speeds. Probably only a horsepower or two to turn that pump. But anyways, the pumps that are on these cars are pretty notorious for not pumping that great. So they have cavitation issues and stuff like that. And this pump flows like not quite twice as much, but a substantial amount more than a stock pump. So that's good. So we're doing that too, and the electronics for this will be tied together with the electronics for the steering rack. So when the key turns on, the pump will just always run. When the key turns on, the rack will always be on. So that's kind of nice. I can just turn the key on and turn the steering wheel if I'm in the garage or whatever and I need to move the car without starting it. I can just turn the key. So that's kind of nice, and I'll have power steering. So that's kind of cool. But anyways, so I got the water pump going. So I just got this belt on. I just did a quick measurement and got lucky on my first belt try. So I took off the 2 idler pulleys that go over here, and obviously the pump's gone and the reservoir is gone for the power steering, and the cooling line for the power steering that runs up here is all gone. That's all laying down in here. So it kind of cleans up the front of the motor, which I like a lot. Cleans up the area in front of the where the oil filter is at. It's super crowded in there with the power steering lines would run right around the area where my oil cooler lines were and stuff. It's kind of a pain. So it also cleans up the engine bay a little bit, which I really like a lot. So on these newer cars, there's just tons of stuff in here. Another thing that I decided to do, and Chris talked me into this one too, was I converted to the 07 and up coolant crossover. So basically the stock 05 to 05 and 06, and I think part of 07, they use this contraption. So let's see here. So this end right here comes off the block, and then the thermostat is in this little thing right here, and then this comes up. Where did this hook into? This goes into the radiator. I think it goes like, I can't remember. It goes like that. I think it goes like that. Anyways, I think this, oh no, I'm sorry. So this was on here. It's a massive, it's ridiculous. So this went to the radiator. This went to the engine block, I think. This goes to the coolant overflow. This comes off the block. It's just crazy. It's just, I don't understand why Ford did that. But anyways, I actually had one of these crossovers because this is an '08 motor, but I didn't convert to this setup because it uses different hoses, and I didn't want to buy another thing when I put this motor in. I already spent so much money, and I actually sold the crossover that I had to some guy. So Chris found me a good deal on one of these used. So this is the crossover right here. Comes from one head to the other side to this head. And now the thermostat is housed right here on the top of this crossover. So now you have one hose that goes from the engine block to the bottom of the radiator, one hose that goes from the top of the radiator to the top of the motor, and then this hose has a Y connection that connects into the overflow. So obviously I wasn't just going to buy stock hoses, so I got Mishimoto silicone hoses. So this is the upper hose. Look, it's kind of ugly. I don't really care for the way this hose looks. It's huge. But anyways, this is the upper hose, and then this is the lower hose right here. So again, let's see, I think this side hooks into the block, this side hooks into the radiator, this side goes up to the coolant overflow. So anyways, I just started this project. I don't know, I got about 4 hours into it now. So anyways, all the old stuff's out, and I hate working with coolant because it just goes everywhere. But anyways, I got all this back together because you got to take the intake manifold off, you got to take the alternator off to get to this crossover here, and I got it all put back together. I got the belt on it. That's a 63.5-inch belt, in case you're wondering and you want to do this yourself. And it fit really well. I was shocked I got on the first try. So anyways, I wanted to get that figured out and done before I put the hoses on it, because that just complicates things. So next up, I got to get my oil cooler sandwich plate back on, get the sway bar back on, oil cooler and all that, and then I'll put the hoses on it, and then I'll get the rack back in the car with the new rack. So anyways, that's where we're at for now, and I'll cover the electronics installation towards the end of the video. So anyways, I'm liking it so far. All right, so I'm working on the wiring. Obviously I have to clean it up a little bit still, but I have it all soldered. So the water pump and the steering rack use some of the same power supply stuff. So this is the box that turns the rack on. So that's very low amp draw. That's this gray pair of wires right here. So we got a ground and a and a power, obviously. So what we've done here is I've tied into the harness for the pump for the rack. So to turn the rack on. The rack has its own separate power supply. So this large ground cable here tying into the main battery ground is for the rack, and this red power line is tied into the main power supply from the battery going to the fuse box. So that's what powers the rack. This is what turns the rack on. So super low amp draw. I'm not worried about overtaxing the pump setup. This is the way that Chris did it. And I'll put a link in the description for the articles that Chris wrote on how to do this installation. So I'm copying his work 100%. So this isn't my idea. This is his. This is the way he came up with it. So anyways, what you do is you buy one of these. This is the box. So it's a fuse tap. So basically what this is doing, so this right here is powering the relay to kick on the pump and the steering rack subsequently. So basically what we've done here is we've tied in the green wire on the relay. This is a little fuse. So what you do is you pull your fuse out, then put the fuse in this little corner of it. It's a neat little thing actually. But anyway, so that gets power source when the key turns on. That's what turns on the rack, turns on the pump. So the pump will be running as soon as I turn the key on at all times. So will the rack. So anyways, I haven't turned it on yet, but hopefully there's no smoke. I'm getting ready to turn it on. All right, so I hear the pump running, so that's good news. And obviously I won't really be able to tell if the power steering is, I mean, it moves easy. I don't know. We'll find out when we start it up and drive it. We just heard the relay kick off for the pump. So the pump ran for a second or two after I turned the key off, and then the relay kicked and it turned off. So awesome. So this relay, this is the Meziere installation kit relay. I recommend buying that, just makes it much easier. So I think everything's working. So I'm gonna get the wires all buttoned up, get this tightened down, and then I'm gonna get the wheels back on it. Let me show you guys the rack now that it's daytime and it's not freaking dark. All right, so the rack is in. You don't have to do much to bolt it in. This is the power cable harness that I got from MMR, and this is the signal coming from that little box. So I've zip tied that up right there. Like I said, you don't have to do too much, but if you look right here in this corner, you have to grind some of the K-member away to clear this corner right here. So you can't get it back far enough if that's there. There's a third location for a bolt on the newer cars, I guess. And it's a huge metal thing that runs back there. I cut that off. I never see myself changing this K-member to a newer style. Even if I did, it probably wouldn't matter. Obviously the old rack didn't break off because it only had 2 bolts on it. I don't think this one will either, so not too worried about that. I got the bump steer kit reinstalled. Did a lot of cleanup under here because there was still oil everywhere. But definitely like the much cleaner area up in here without all the power steering lines running right through these hoses. So that's super nice. Anyways, pretty pumped. Now I just got to tidy it all up, put it back together. Stoked. That wasn't that bad at all. All right, so that's it. We're all buttoned up. I'm just getting the coolant back in it. So just quick view, just a couple extra wires on a little box. Definitely like having this open area. I can change the filter from the top now, actually, if I really wanted to. So anyways, got the car all cleaned up. I get the coolant burped out of it, the air burped out of it, and then get tires and front bumper back on it and go for a drive. All right, so it's running, just trying to get the coolant in it. Note to self, the little add a circuit thing with the fuses in it. You have to put 2 fuses in it, not just one. So I started it up and it was running like crap and threw a bunch of codes, and that's why. So anyways, now it's warming up, trying to get some coolant in it, and then we'll get the rest of it put back together. Alright, so we're out for the test drive. So far it feels pretty good. I was really hoping that the steering feel wouldn't be super light. It's definitely lighter than it was before, but I wouldn't say it's super light. It's out here on the favorite road. Sorry, I'm going to grab my seat. Definitely, the steering feels really smooth. I'm stoked about that. These tires are so stupid. Oh my gosh. Anyways. So I got the alignment set up with a 16th toe-in, which is what I had before. Just had a bunch of rain out here, so the road's a little damp. Bunch of dirt in the road. Anyways, so yeah, I'd say all things considered, it went really well. The electrical aspect of it was super simple. Nothing too crazy. I used solder on everything just to make sure I had good connections. Power-wise, I mean, it's 10 to 15 horsepower at the most between the pump and the steering. So you might feel that. The car feels really good. One thing I did notice was that it didn't feel to taper off as much in the higher RPM range. So 6,500 still felt really good. Maybe there's some power up top that I'm feeling, because that's really where you would notice it. It would, those pumps, the water pump and the power steering pump, cause more and more drag as the RPM goes up. So if those are no longer there, what you would see in the power graph is, if you compared the old power versus the new, is that it would slowly start to separate towards the top, meaning that you get more and more power than before towards the top end. So I mean, there's a good chance that that's what I'm feeling, that there's, 10 or 15 horsepower that I'm feeling up top, which, I mean, there is going to be some power gain. That's kind of a proven fact. So how much it is up for debate. Each power steering pump and each water pump is a little bit different. So, but I would expect 15 horsepower, 10 to 15 tops. You're not going to get any more than that. Because I already had underdrive pulleys on to begin with. So, but anyways, so far I'm really liking what I feel. It feels really nice. I don't feel that I've lost any feel, so that's kind of cool. This car is just ridiculous for a freaking live axle Ford product from the mid and it's something I probably won't notice till I get on track, although I was getting after it pretty good right there. And these aren't like slicks or anything. I mean, they're still 200 treadwear tires, so I shouldn't run into any problems. But they'll have like a flutter in the wheel. They'll like shake the wheel because the computer or the programming in the steering rack can't handle what's going on. So it happens with really sticky tires and really stiff bushings in your lower control arm. So I don't have really stiff bushings. I have GT 500 bushings, so they're a little bit stiffer than GT bushing. But anyways, I don't expect to have any problems even on track. But super pumped. Car feels incredible. This car is amazing. It's a really, really well dialed in car. Best car I've owned for sure as far as handling goes. But I love my S550. That was a lot of fun. And it was maybe a little more refined than this, but this chassis is so good for being a live axle. It's stupid. And I don't even have any like really expensive suspension pieces. So anyways, that's it for this video, guys. If you have any questions about the install, let me know in the comments and I'll do the best I can to answer them. But